guys, welcome to this Moneycontrol live stream. I'm Nandita, Khemka, and it's an important day when it comes to macroeconomic data. The GDP figures for the fourth quarter as well as for FY23 will be released later in the evening. And who better than Latha, Venkatesh to put things into perspective for us and to tell us what one should be watching out for when it comes to this crucial data. Latha, thanks a lot for joining in. First of all, the expectation this time is like within a very wide range from 4.1% or thereabouts to about 5.7%. And for FY23 as well, we are expected to reclaim that 7% growth figure, right? Is there any chance of, the figures surprising on the positive side and maybe coming in at the higher end of the spectrum?
That is very much the expectation. That the pace of growth from Q3 to Q4 has been fairly robust. The Rabi harvest has been robust. So even in our poll, we have a fairly wide range. As you say, there are people at 4.1 and there are people who are at least 5.5. There were 2 people. So it's quite possible that it surprises on the upside. The average is 5.1.
Right.
But there is an upward bias if you go by the number of persons who are voting above.
All right. So, services sector, as we all know, is expected to drive growth given the fact that there's a lot of demand for travel and hotels and the likes. But what about manufacturing? Is it expected to pick up or, how is it going to be?
I think that's going to be the lame duck or the disaster, if you please. The numbers I got were even 0.3 and 0.4 and it's clearly manufacturing has not taken off much. There is also a base effect because we had come out of Delta in the previous year ago, base quarter. So there could be some base also to it. But that was also Omicron month. So I don't know whether base is a big culprit. But manufacturing clearly has not done much for itself. But maybe the upside surprise may come from there.
Right.
But even the FMCG companies didn't report much growth in volume.
Yeah.
I mean, there were some
rural
price-led
overhang
gains.
is still there. There's not been really a pickup in rural demand.
Only towards March they were speaking about a better recovery. So manufacturing is not going to be very good, but power is very good. But power gets counted a little separately. The way the GDP is broken up, agri, and then there's utilities. So electricity, power, gas. All those utilities come together. That's expected to grow a good 7%. That's the positive part of industry. And then services. Yeah, services are really firing.
Yeah, services actually firing on all cylinders. But let's talk about private investment. Government of course has prodded corporates to invest more. Can we expect a pickup in private investments now, or
I don't know, the numbers so far don't show that. There have been analysts who have separately looked at corporate investment as a percentage of GDP. It's certainly better than year ago, but FY23 is better than FY22 because those were still very much COVID hit years. So there is a definite growth, but it's not spectacular. It's clearly still led by government. After all, in FY23, the government capex, central government budget capex was up 37%. So it is leading from the front, as it were. Private final consumption expenditure is something which people will watch a lot. GDP has got an output side and a demand side.
Yeah.
The output side is your agri, industry, services. The demand side is it personal consumption? Is it government consumption? Is it for investment? That over there, personal consumption, I got an average of 3.3, 3.4. My sense is it will be better than that, but that's not good enough. It should be 7, 8.
Yeah, well, it should be. But let's talk about FY24. IMF has, of course, scaled down India's FY24 growth estimate from 6% to 5.9% or thereabouts. But RBI is expecting 6.5% for FY24. Now, this is a time when Germany has officially entered into a recession. US and UK are staring at slowdown. But, India, of course, everybody maintains that India remains a bright spot, among the global gloom. So how is FY24 expected? What are you picking up when you speak to analysts and, economists and
it's obvious IMF from where they are coming. They're seeing so much gloom and doom around their, those continents. So global is going to be a headwind. RBI in their economic assessment in their annual report, which was released yesterday, also say that it's a good growth story, but there is a global headwind. There can also be financial volatility if some more banks go under in the US regional banking sector. So that volatility is always there. There can be OPEC related, geopolitical related push to crude prices. So these headwinds are likely to be there. Destination countries, if they don't buy enough, then our exports will, yeah, and that will have a multiplier effect. But RBI's confidence stems from the fact that the domestic segment is doing well. If the Kharif is as good as the Rabi was, if we don't have an El Nino related threat, then there is a goodish bit of demand that they are expecting. Another factor which I think RBI is relying on heavily is that India has become a services exporter of some clout. Until now, what we do every month, we get the data is goods exports.
Yeah.
But software is the big services export, is what we thought. Now there is a growing category of non-software services export, which comes in the BOP numbers. It will come on May 31st. You will get the numbers for the quarter ended March 31st. That's just booming. People are now giving us work to do, tax compliance, audit, risk, analytics. So much is being said. That's not all software. It is just services, office work.
Okay.
Which, because it's labor is expensive in the US, it is getting outsourced, and people have realized that these can be done remotely now after COVID. So probably RBI is pinning its hopes on the rise of non-software services export, which you create one job, that man consumes entertainment, consumes services, transport, whatever, telephone, everything. So that normally has a multiplier effect and creates 3 or 4 more jobs. So I think Reserve Bank has something, otherwise they wouldn't be insisting so much on 6.5. The whole world is at 6.2, and the best, I think, Saumyo, the SBI economist, is 6.2. Everyone else is 6 and below that. But just now, Goldman Sachs upped their forecast from 6 to 6.3, 2 days back.
Oh, right.
So you never know.
You never know.
RBI may be right and others may follow.
Yeah. Since we're talking about, jobs and everything, let's talk about interest rates as well. Of course, a lot is happening in the United States, we have the US debt ceiling deal that is being thrashed out. There's voting left, and, maybe by 5th, we will have a clear picture on where this issue is headed. But of course, we have our policy next week, right? So, Fed, of course, will decide upon whether it will go for a pause, or the case is actually now building up for another 25 basis point hike when it comes to the US Fed, Federal Reserve. But for us back home, do you think the RBI will stick to its guns and come out with another pause in the upcoming policy, or will what's happening in the US have some bearing on where the RBI is headed when it announces
what the
policy
Fed does will have a bearing. In that, you should not be factoring in a cut.
Cut.
There are the swap market was factoring in a cut as of October, about 2-3 weeks back. Then they have pushed it now to December, but a cut is on the cards. December, everyone was sitting with February. Just before the elections and just after the budget or the vote on account was the expectation. People have scaled it forward because the April inflation number was below expectation at 4.7. 2 months in a row, inflation surprised on the downside, and it's going to be 4.5 when May numbers come out, and people are expecting 4.5 even in June. So then when you go into the June policy, you have 2 4-point something readings behind you. So RBI definitely has no scope for a hike, but cut they may not, because as you can see that there is a bit of hawkishness building into the Fed. And clearly the Fed's rate cuts have been pushed out into second half of 24. So pauses, the residuary. If you definitely don't see a case for hike because your inflation is surprising on the downside and you can't cut because of the uncertainties ahead, pause is the default.
Well, pause is the default for the RBI's policy, which is slated to come out on the 7th of June.
Especially if the growth is better than expected, then why give a cut?
Of course.
Economy is doing well.
Yeah, that's true. Economy is doing well. But one last question. RBI has rolled out a very healthy dividend for the government, right? I was reading somewhere there's still chances of any kind of slippage when it comes to the fiscal deficit, or, the fact that they've got a healthy dividend will save us from a slippage this time.
No, the dividend is more or less making up for extra they will pay on fertilizer subsidy. So it's not as if they have more cash. It will still depend on getting their tax collections right, which they should. But this fear of slippage stems from the fact that this is the last year of the NDA 2 term.
Right.
And it's, closer to February, the vote on account. Last time, the PM Kisan Samman Nidhi, 6,000 rupees to every Kisan family was announced in the vote on account or just before it. So there will always be a tendency to vote for some schemes which give not freebies but give money, some kind of income to some income transfer schemes to the poor. That is why people are expecting slippage, not per se. It's still too early. What do we know about tax collection?
That's true. That's true. Well, so the final word on GDP around 5.1 to 5.5%. That's the consensus.
Yes, for the quarter and 7 to 7.1 for the
full year effect. Well, with that, I think we have come to the end of this discussion. We'll of course be watching out for those figures that will be released somewhere around 5:30 p.m. Today. And of course, Moneycontrol will be getting you live coverage and analysis of the GDP figures that come out at around that time in the evening. But from for now, it's a goodbye from me and Latha. Thanks a lot for watching. But for more news and updates, stay tuned to Moneycontrol. Thank you.